Hello, welcoming everyone to the third spotlight session for day one. In this session, we are going to talk about the director onshore ONGC. He also headed the flagship Make in India and Startup India initiatives in ONGC. We welcome you, sir. For the esteemed panelists, we have Sri Sai Subramaniam, Director, Projects and Rajasthan Asset. He has been with Cairn and Oil Gas Vedanta Limited for more than 18 years now. We welcome you, sir. We also Indian School of Mines, Dhanbad, and he joined ONGC in 1987. He also has a rich experience of working in onshore and offshore assets and the Institute of Reservoir Studies for ONGC for more than 3 decades. We welcome you, sir. We also have Sri R.K. Vij. He is a dynamic professional and well recognized leader with 39 years of industry experience in various facets of fields of India. We welcome you, sir. We also have Sri Vilas Taure. He has 35 years of versatile experience in oil and gas industry. He also led the thought leadership on unconventional gas in India by changing the perception of CBM development, de-risking of portfolio, and creating a sustainable model for long-term monetization of key assets. Now, may I welcome the co-chair of the session, Sri Yash Malik. He is working as an advisor in the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas for more than 1.5 years now. After more than 36 years of experience with a public sector giant, Oil and Natural Gas Corporation Limited, in the energy sector, he superannuated in March 2018 as the Executive Director, Chief of Corporate Planning in ONGC. Having worked in various key positions in ONGC, he gained specialized experience in corporate broad level management, corporate affairs, strategic planning, marketing, onshore and offshore oil and gas field operations, and project with a proven ability to deliver production and marketing goals and objectives of the upstream sector within the stipulated timelines. We welcome you, sir, and may I request you, Mr. Yash Malik, to commence the event, please.
Good evening, everybody. We welcome you all to the third session of the day. Also, I welcome Director Onshore, Mr. Anurag Sharma, and all the speakers, Mr. Gyani, Mr. Tavade, Mr. Vij, Mr. Sai Subramaniam. A brief introduction of our director. Director Onshore is the director of this Maharatna, steering 7 assets and 1 CBM asset. He's also director in charge marketing, OMPL and HSC and other responsibilities he holds in ONGC. He has been working and steering many projects in OVL too. So he has the best of experience and practices as regard practices and technology. International exposure is also there. As asset manager of Kaveri, he increased the production to a level which was never seen 2 decades before. So with all these he is well versed to take all challenges head on which are required to meet the production. So I welcome you all, sir. We all know production challenges are many. right from development to managing the matured fields and then enhancing their production. And of course, unconventional have their own challenges. Just a little statistics. We have say around 4.2 billion BTOE of reserves with us, out of which 2.3 billion have already been produced. So balance recoverable reserves are only 1.9 billion. And for the future, if we have to meet the 50% demand requirement, which means a level of production of around 110 MMT of oil and 190 BCM of gas per year by 2050. This means that we have to produce 2 times the production of what we have produced in the last 60 years. So we have to produce, 2 times in the next 30 years to what we have produced in the last 60 years. So that is the challenge. And we have the best of speakers lined up who are leaders in their own sector wherever they are. So I invite Mr. Sai Subramaniam to the first lecture in this session. He is director in charge in Kane for the Rajasthan project. He's been associated in almost all projects of Kane in Cambay and associated basins. He's the production of cane, one knows, is the highest after ONGC as regard oil production is concerned, and they've ramped up very fast. They've brought in new technology very fast. So we'll get a glimpse of everything from Mr. Sai Subramaniam. So the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Malik ji, and very good afternoon to everyone. Firstly, the session chair, the co-chair, co-panelists, the backstage, and the organizers, very, very warm welcome. And it's a privilege for me to be in front of you and also the virtual attendees. I'm seeing a number of 171. Share our thoughts on the journey of how we changed the production challenges into opportunities and how we went about building on that. And when I saw the title of production challenges, I thought I should see how Kane Oil and Gas Vedanta has has converted these challenges into opportunities and how we made it happen to contribute 25% of India's production. So the next 10 or 15 minutes, whatever time I have, I will quickly take through the journey of the production challenges and how we have utilized that and converted into the opportunities. Can I have the slides, please? So today I would be taking through on the journey of our enhanced oil recovery processes using polymer and yet to be, I would say, implemented project, which is the ASP, where we are in the advanced stages of that. So these are the two things which I'll be touching upon, and upon the request of Malik ji, I've also put up 1 or 2 slides on the hydraulic fracturing on the tight reservoirs. I didn't want to do a deep dive on that because there's a separate session which will be talking mostly about how we have benefited out of the hydraulic fracturing. So I have limited slides on that, but I'll be taking in-depth insight into the ASP and the UR. Next. So the agenda for my discussion today would be on the various EOR methods and the chemical EOR implemented, the journey, where how it got started and where we have reached, and what are the opportunities for us, not for Kane Oil alone, it's for the entire India, where today we have close to around 6,900 million tons of oil in place. Even a 1 or 2% incremental recovery would help us get a production that is equivalent to an year's production of India, which is around 32 to 33 million ton of oil production. So that is the kind of impact, the incremental recovery that can propel India's desire for additional production. Rather than importing, we can have self-sustained production from our Indian basins. And I will touch upon the pilots which we have conducted in the alkali surfactant polymer, and also what are the enablers and challenges what we have. So these are the few things which I will be touching upon in next 8 to 10 minutes. Next slide, please. So I will not go into detail because everyone knows, and as an oil professional, we all know that there are various 3 stages. And the tertiary stage, which is the thermal, the chemical EOR, is what I will discuss today. And today's specific focus will be on the chemical EOR, what we have implemented in clean oil and gas is what I'll be talking. And you can see there that the primary and secondary processes can get us to 20 to 40% of oil in place, the recovery factor, wherein the enhanced oil recovery can take it up to 60% is what we believe in. And I can take you through our journey, what we have undertaken till now. Next slide, please. So, like I said, in the tertiary recovery, apart from the thermal and gas-based, the water-based is our area of interest. We have done extensive screening, thanks to the help of our partner ONGC, especially IRS, who had also helped us during our screening stages on the water-based EOR, which we had implemented in our largest field. Next slide, please. So as you all know, in order to increase the recovery from the field oil, the reservoirs, the primary, this one is to how do we improve the viscosity of the water which we inject in the reservoir, which can help drive the oil out. The polymer, it can improve the sweep efficiency by increasing the mobility. The surfactant, which will ensure the displacement of oil from the reservoir, it helps enable to push it out of the reservoir. And last but not the least, the alkali plays an important role in the displacement by changing the property in terms of increasing the pH of the injected fluid, and also it generates in situ soap kind of a solution which will enable to liberate the oil globules molecules sitting in the pores so that it can be displaced and brought to the surface. It's a basic principle, physics behind what the ASP and polymer drive means, and this we have utilized it for the production of recovery, to improve the recovery from our fields. Next slide. So the polymer and the ASP is not new to oil and gas. It has been there since 1985. Various chemical floods have been done across the world. If you see Latin America, you have US, in fact China, you have the huge polymer fields which they have utilized for tertiary recovery. And India, ONGC had started long time back, and a lot of fields that have flooded with the polymer, and we took on this journey ever since we started our Rajasthan operations. If you recall, the Mangla was the gigantic onshore oil field which was discovered in the year 2004, and from then on a huge amount of effort went in to produce or recover oil from this field. And we started the journey of enhanced oil recovery right from day one. I'll be coming to the next slide on that. But before that, what I want to give you a glimpse of the journey which started in 2004 about the polymer. It's still continuing. In the sense, there are 3 big fields, Mangala, Bhagyam, Aishwarya, which put together have 2 billion barrel of oil in place. We are exploiting with help of polymer and would be exploiting using alkali and surfactant in the days to come. And the polymer in Mangala was done in the year 2014, and we have peaked production from the polymer production in Mangala, and now we have embarked on the next phase of alkali and surfactant, which is in the advanced stages of implementation. And the other 2 fields, Bhagyam and Aishwarya, we had done the pilot and we had started in a small way. In the last few months, we have also commissioned the Bhagyam and Aishwarya polymer flooding, which we would be seeing the results in the coming months. Already we could see a good response to the polymer flooding in these two fields, and we should see the increase in production coming up after starting the polymer injection in both Bhagyam and Aishwarya. In short, all the three big fields in the Rajasthan block has been flooded with the polymer, and we have completed the pilot of alpha-Lee surfactant polymer in Mangala field, and we would be taking up in Bhagyam Aishwarya field. Next. So this is an important slide for everyone to understand that why is it important to start the journey very early? Because once this was discovered, when we knew the quality of the oil, when we knew various geophysical, geochemical properties of the rocks, we realized that there's a huge potential in recovering oil from Mangala field. So by the time the oil was discovered, if you see that the screening studies had started the same time. Although we knew that we will be doing the water flooding in the earlier phases, but then we started the work on the screening for EOR. So various, I would say, various processes were studied, and if you see about the Surftech and the UT were involved in the study of the screening processes. And in the year 2006, we had done elaborate laboratory studies. It was like multiple combination, huge amount of cores were extracted from the reservoir, and we had done a lot of core flood to narrow down on the right formulation, which is very, very critical for one to recover a good volume of the hydrocarbon from this reservoir. So exhaustive study, you can see from the time we started 2006 to 2012, we done an exhaustive study, came up to a point of getting the formulation done. And in the year 2010, I would say, that was the time when we started Mangala operations. That was the time when we started Mangala operations with water flooding. We have already started the pilot as the polymer pilot. And within 16 months, the polymer was able to suggest a good recovery from Mangala field. And once that got over, then immediately we started with the alkali and surfactant process for the Mangala. And in the year 2014, we completed the test and we had the results in hand. So that is the kind of effort that has gone in for the entire, I would say, successful pilot, and also have a good understanding of how the tertiary recovery of the fields like the fields can be used as an opportunity for us to produce or recover more from this oil and gas. What happens is generally that there's a huge impetus on going for an exploration. But then even if we can convert the existing fields, improve the recovery by 1 or 2%, that can be a huge game changer, because we have already the infrastructure in hand. All it takes is to how to get the screening done by doing exhaustive work, and also get the right formulation, which will help us do the tertiary recovery in the right way. So the reason I've been telling about this is, when we started the journey, there were a lot of complexities, in the sense we were one of the, I would say, one of the first to implement polymer in a single locations, where whatever case studies we had, all the places people have done in a small location or a small field, concentrated with 2 or 3 small zones, and whether it's China, whether it's in US or Canada. So when we embarked on this project, we went ahead to flood the entire reservoir of Mangala with polymer, and we're using the back produced polymer liquid, treat that water, and then put it back into the reservoir. So this was a big thing that had happened that changed completely, I would say, our understanding about how this has to be implemented in a large scale, and also gave us confidence how going forward we should be implementing the alkali surfactant. So that is the journey what we have undertaken, and results is what So when we envisaged in the year 2013 on this polymer project, we had put up a proposal of, I would say, recovering close to 70 million barrels of oil using the tertiary recovery using polymer. Till date, we have exceeded 70 million barrel. I would say we are in the vicinity of 80 million barrels of oil we have produced. So that's the kind of, I would say, confidence, and that's the kind of output what we have got, which has helped us move to the next step of going ahead and working on the studies for the ASP. Next. So this is just a glimpse of a few slides which will help us understand the journey what we started in the pilot. If you could see when the polymer flood, which when we started, it showed a clear, good response of the water cut going down, and within 3-4 months, we could see the increase in oil production, and water cut went back to around 70-80%. And we're talking about 11% incremental production, and that's a very, very great this one from there. Similarly, in the ASP pilot, whatever we have undertaken, the recovery was in excess of 20% of oil in place. So this is the next set of, I would say, opportunities where we have greater confidence that we will be able to succeed, given the experience and given the good exposure we had in our polymer story. And once it is done, this is going to be one of the biggest, I would say, ASP facility in the entire world, which would be able to recover close to around 55% of oil in place from Mangla. So that's where we are. Next. So this is to give the way when we set forward the production profile of how do we recover from MBA field. So you would see that on the base water flood case, we would have come down to less than 25,000 of oil production against 75,000 what we are doing from Mangla. Mangla, Bhagyam, Aishwarya put together, we are in excess of 100 today, 110. If the polymer weren't there, we would be hovering around somewhere around 35 to 40,000. And similarly, you can see the clear wedge there. And if we implement the ASP in the next 2 to 3 years time, we could see the oil production going back to those glorious days when we did the combined oil production of from MBA field to the tune of 160,000 barrels of oil production a day. So ASP will definitely help arrest the decline, and also will add significant reserves. And any delay to that will definitely impact the peak production, what has been shown to you in the slide pack. Next. So to sum it up on our journey and the key enablers for that, for tertiary oil recovery to be successful, the technical screening and detailed lab work is very, very important, and a lot of emphasis is required on that, because the lot of assumptions what we do when we do the modeling and also various other parameters. So if we are able to get the right formulation, we are assured of the recovery what we anticipate from that. That's a good learning for us, and I'm sure a lot of Indian fields also would respond to that in a similar way. And we had a lot of external advisors who provided guidance, especially from the Shell and other people. A lot of papers were exchanged, and our team themselves presented papers outside India, and a lot of learnings were there, and this was a great success for us. And the pilot, which also provided us a good insight as to how the back-produced polymerized water from the reservoir can help us be treated the right way so that it can be re-injected back in the reservoir. Not but the least, the good collaborative approach between our joint venture ONGC assisted by IRS and IOGPT in terms of getting the right infrastructure, and with our DGH, these efforts were coming on the board. In fact, a lot of encouragement that helped us go ahead and I would say implement one of the largest I would say polymer facility and polymer flooding in a single location. And of course, which I started my first slide, the technical and commercial foresight started right from the time when we commissioned, I would say, when the Mangla was conceived. So that helped us to get the right formulation. Next. So the challenges is on the accounts of say the oil price volatility. So if you see when we embarked on this project, the polymer cost, I would say, for the incremental oil was in the region of $7 to $8 per barrel. And with the oil price fluctuation going down to $25 to $30, it was really a challenge for us to see how do we optimize. And once again, rather than the challenge, it provided us an opportunity. So that is where what we did was try to understand how do we ensure that the polymer viscosity is maintained right from the time it is produced till the time it's injected in the wellhead. So which enabled us to have a good, I would say, control on the polymer injection. And that helped us understand from what we originally envisaged as to what would be the wellhead viscosity versus what would be the viscosity when the polymer is produced. And we cut it short. That helped us to conserve the polymer and at the same time increase the productivity from the wells. And the implementation timelines, as such, the polymer, the entire journey takes a long time. So with all the learnings what we have, and it was easier for us to replicate same in Bhagyam and Aishwarya, and also the other fields where we have, which is on production in the last 3 years. The ER policy of 2018 would help us definitely to put it under screening and start the polymer process at the earliest. And chemicals and logistics is a challenge, but then with during one of our casual talk, one of our co-panelists also talked about the new unit which has come up in Gandhidham. So things like that, with government promoting a lot of such initiatives in India, providing the support, will help us use India-produced polymer in all these processes. Because for any chemical polymer is required. And that being the backbone for the additional recovery, I would seriously think that how India should have its own polymer producing facility in India, which would head. In fact, why we produce a HPAM, we can always have polymer which is in the, I would say, in a gel state or next to the wellhead, so that it can be used then and there. So those are the things which we should explore, and the right framework and the policies should help us the partners to develop that in India, which will help us reduce the overall cost and make the entire project viable. Next. Okay, so in summary, I talked about the entire screening process till the pilot is conducted. There is a complex process. At the same time, right formulation will help to produce the right amount of, I would say, recover made good recovery, and the proactive planning from the start, which helps us to realize the full potential of the EOR. And what we have seen is we would say that we have already in the close to around 10 to 11% of oil in place recovery we have seen in polymer, and the ASP can further take it up by another 15 to 20%, which will help us to reach to around 55 to 60% of oil in place recovery from Mangala. Same thing we want to replicate in Bhagyam and Aishwarya. And I also talked about this chemical available in sufficient quantity. So once we start the ASP, the biggest challenge which we want to convert into an opportunity is to source the kind of chemical that's required. Today we are consuming close to around 175 tons of polymer a day, and when the ASP is going to be implemented, requiring close to around another 175 to 200 tons of surfactant and close to around 1800 tons of alkali that is required. So you can imagine the kind of chemicals that's required. So I would see that there's an opportunity here, and the right policy framework which can help a lot of MSMEs or companies to set up infrastructure here, which would not only for cane, it's for entire in India, wherever we wanted to implement the chemical EOR, it will be a great help, which could also reduce the cost, and we could have our increase in production from all those places. So these are the few things which I thought I should highlight in this forum. Next. Okay, and I think there's a last slide, which on the left-hand side, which is a small pilot facility which we had set up, and the right-hand side is a full field chemical, I would say, chemical polymer facility, which is in one of its kind at a single location, treating around, pumping around 550,000 barrels of polymerized water in the reservoir for producing around 100,000 barrels of oil from the MBA field. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Subramaniam, for giving us such a wonderful talk on this world-class successful project. Remarkable is that you are planning a recovery of 60% from your field. Thank you very much for the talk. Now I request Mr. Owen Gyani, the head of Institute of Reservoir Studies, ONGC. He's been in ONGC for more than 3 decades, and he's rather he's spearheading the challenges, production challenges in ONGC from the front, because this is the place where all the development plans, UR schemes are conceived. So stage is open for you, Gyaniji.
So thank you, Malisa. Respected chair of this session, co-chair, co-speakers, and other participants. Very good afternoon, evening to everybody. At the outset, I would like to thank the organizers for giving me the opportunity for being the part of this particular session and to speak on a topic which is very close to my heart. And the topic is optimizing mature fields production and monetization of discovery. When we talk about mature field, one thing comes to everybody's minds, that production must be in a declining mode. But let me tell you, there is the concerted effort by all the companies, not only to contain the decline, but at sometimes reverse the decline mode. And that is the effort made by each and every company across the world over. Sometimes we succeed, sometimes we don't succeed so much. Before I start the presentation, one thing I would like to state. First, subsurface has to play a very vital role as far as the recovery is concerned. But it is the synergy all across the value chain which ultimately brings the recovery factor out. So that we have to keep in mind, and that in our industry we call MDT. So MDT is the real, I tell you, heart of the whole thing, which really brings the recovery factor what we are thinking of. Maybe 50%, 60% or 40% depending upon the different reservoirs and fluid condition. When this topic was given to me, I was under the dilemma whether I should come up with the case histories where I should show all the success, what we have made in the past, what we have done in our field, or I should talk something on a conceptual level, how to increase or improve the production from mature field. I decided the second point. I will not present the case histories of the success in the past. I will talk about the basics, how we can attack the problem and how we can improve the recovery from the mature field and monetize our discovery quite early. So please put up the slide. Please go to next one. So this particular slide is just to begin with. India is in the top 5 countries which is consuming this energy most, and we are the net importer. Everybody knows that. In oil, almost we are producing less than 20% what we consume. Gas, almost 50% what we consume, and we incur a lot of import bill of the order of say 100 to 80 to 100 billion dollar, and which is a major chunk of our total import bill, maybe 20% of our total import bill, and that is the situation we are in. We are working in to reduce the import and other things, 10% import reductions. But if we see the last 15 years production trend of India, some 15 years back, we were at 34 million ton, and today we are at 32 million ton. In last 15 years, there was a phase between 2010 to 2015, when Mangla field came on production, Rajasthan field came on production, which has a reserve base of around, in place of around 300 million ton. We touched a peak of around 38 million ton for 3-4 years in between. But if you see the last 15 years, we are around 34 million ton to 32 million ton. So given the matured field, given the discoveries what we have made in the last 15 years, we have been able to maintain our production at a level of around say 30 million ton, you say. Now, how to increase this one? No, can you please go to the another slide? Once we talk about mature field, what it is, there are different angles to see it. If a field has produced more than 25, 30 years, we call it a mature field. Once the production is in declining mode, we start calling it as a mature field. Once the field hits an economic limit, things are not becoming viable as far as IOR and EOR schemes are concerned, we start calling it mature field. So there are different angles of seeing. As far as the textbook is concerned, no textbook gives a definition for the mature field. It is left to the perception of our industry people. But what is the purpose? The beauty with the mature field is that we have the knowledge base of last 25, 30, 40 years. And that is the value we have to encash. And there is the job, real job of all the engineers, all the data analytics, everything needs to be integrated. So value of a mature field is that we have a history of 20, 30, 40 years that we have to encash. And second, the purpose, what I have written, what exactly we are looking from the mature field. What we are looking to maintain the productivity because it is in a declining phase. The challenge is to maintain the productivity of the well so that we can prepone the economic recovery. That is the basic objective we are working. Whatever technology we are bringing, whatever production, operational side we are doing, the purpose is to maintain the productivity or improve the productivity to prepone the economic recovery. Can you go to next slide, please? What are the challenges? In my 3 decades of experience, when I dealt with not only ONGC, joint venture fields, OVL fields, some of the points I have brought out here may not be very exhaustive. Some of the points might have been left, but these are the major points which challenges we face in the mature field. Liquid decline. With the best of our effort, sometimes we see the pressure sink. We see the facility constraint. We see the constraint on effluent disposal. We see the bottlenecking, interconnections in the field, due to which we start losing liquid. Optimization of artificial lift. In mature field, generally producing wells, numbers are quite high. Sometimes we are not geared up to handle the artificial lift. This becomes one of the challenges to handle. Water management. We either inject or there is a active aquifer support. In both the case, we start getting a lot of water production in the mature field. How we are handling that water, that also we will deal in the subsequent slide. Aging infrastructure. Once we started the field 25, 30 years back, now field has infrastructure has grown old, field has also grown old. Now we are in a dilemma whether we should really revamp the infrastructure or not. There our mature field starts suffering. Locating bypassed oil, because our well productivity has gone down to say level of say offshore. If we talk about 200, 300 barrel, how we are going to place the infill well to locate the bypass oil, there is a challenge. Operating cost is going up. If there is a pressure sink, it has to be addressed. And last, the previous speaker has dealt with, that is the ASP, how to improve the recovery with EOR. Everything done well, still our recovery is at 35, 40%. How we are going to take it to 50%, 60%. There comes the EOR, where we are going to improve the volumetric sweep efficiency and the displacement efficiency. So these are the challenges. We have to work on the different fields. We'll see different challenges, and we have to handle the challenge if we have to improve the production from mature field. Next slide, please. The basic issue with the mature field is optimization. Basically, it is an issue of optimization in terms of input, in terms of cost, in terms of time management. It is a basically optimization issue. Left-hand side, there is a list of data. Maybe it's a very small, you are not able to see, but day to day, every data we collect in the mature field that goes into analysis. We diagnose the problem, we come up with the recommendation, action plan, it is implemented. Again, we go the surveillance mode. What we implemented, really it has given the result. We again go back to the drawing board and analyze all those things. This is the cycle followed one after another in any mature field. And we have to learn with that past history of the field. We have to learn lessons learned. It has to be incorporated in the future actions so that we don't again fall in the same trap. Next slide, please. The first point, all the mature field, every operator, they face the problem of locating bypassed oil by infill drilling. And here what I told in the previous slide, earlier slide, the knowledge base which we have created in the past decades comes to our hand. How best we have understood our reservoir, how best we have understood our fluid, how best we have understood our rock, how best we have monitored the field in terms of production, water injection and everything. That comes to our rescue to place a well. There are different techniques to locate the bypassed oil. If we talk through saturation logs, there are different saturation logs evolving with the time. We have very advancement as far as the logs are concerned, which help us to locate the bypassed oil. Numerical simulation, integrating all the data which we have generated in past decades. Seismic techniques, people talk about 3D, 4D, which really help us to locate bypassed oil, which has been done in India itself, Rawa. We are also doing in offshore in Neelam and NBP. We are having a broadband data acquisition for locating the bypassed oil. So these are the mechanisms through which we locate the bypassed oil. But this is one of the area for any mature field. Everybody comes to this particular point. And if we talk about any investment, basically this is the way, either we drill the well, we create the facility, or we do the OPEX. These are the three areas where we make the investment. You may call it CapEx, you may call it OPEX, but these are the three areas generally we make the investment in terms of wells, in terms of facility, and in terms of general operation of workover and other operating thing. Next, please. Another thing what we miss is the liquid withdrawal. I have the opportunity to deal almost more than 300 fields all across ONGC, joint venture, and OVL. Many occasions I have come across mature field start losing liquid. And the first warning sign for any particular field is loss of liquid. Once the loss of liquid, that is the first sign you get that your field is not behaving properly. It requires some treatment. To improve, as well as the textbook says, there is a fractional flow, which says if your water cut is very high, even if you improve liquid, water cut is not going to increase much. And there we have to operate the field and extract more and more oil. So people have to start thinking in terms of high liquid withdrawal by stimulation, flow assurance, surface. There are a list of things you can read through the slides, but all these things have to be addressed to keep the liquid production from a particular field intact. Otherwise, we are going to lose the recovery. Some of the examples I have shown below. One is the medium gravity oil field in the Western oil field. And once we maintain the liquid production, rather of late we have improved, our recovery factor is around 32%. And it's still producing more than 1,500 tons per day. And it is going to touch somewhere around 40%. And EOR is also lined up. Another is offshore field, which is having currently 33% recovery, and it's still producing 12,000, 30,000 barrel. And we are quite hopeful of achieving 38% or 39% of recovery. So wherever we have been able to maintain the liquid optimally, we have seen the result. So mature field, this is one of the aspects which we need to address. Otherwise, we are going to lose the recovery. Next, please. Generally, we say we produce oil. But my perception is that we produce liquid. And out of that liquid, world over, there are countries which produce more than 7 barrels of water for 1 barrel of oil. And water cut is somewhere around 88–90%. So we produce 7 times of oil, water, than 1 barrel of oil. So water management, I'm not talking about water injection management. What I'm talking about, water management in terms of water injection, which you do in the field, in terms of what water you are going to produce, how you are going to manage that one during production, and once you produce, how you are going to manage. It is a whole cycle we have to manage if we have to manage the mature field. So coming to first, that is water injection management. Everybody knows water injection is giving good result, but there has to be a good surveillance technique to get benefit out of water injection. And of late, there are many methods which are coming up, CRM, streamline, and artificial intelligence, machine learning, which is really revolutionizing the whole process, how we understand the water injection, how we optimize the water injection. And in the future, I see a lot of opportunity here in our mature field to optimize water injection to have higher and higher recovery. Next, please. The second aspect I told, water production management. We need not produce water if we are able to manage it. We can contain water. If we really do the surveillance, PLT, tracers, water injection, distribution, this will really help us to produce unwanted water. So a lot of management is required in mature field to do the water production management in the wells. And there are methods to curtail water, profile modification, water shutoff. These are the integral part of the any mature field we have to do to improve the recovery. And the last, which is most important thing, once water is produced, it has to be managed. Water is a very precious commodity. The way we have been treating water in the past, we cannot treat it in future. In another 20, 30 years, the way we treated water in the past 20, 30 years, it is going to change. Water is a commodity. We have to make a water which is usable. Either we use in our field for reinjection or we use for agriculture, industrial purpose. And the last option should be for the disposal underground. A lot of work has been done, and I have been seeing there are many symposiums happening only on the water management in the oil industry. So I think things are moving in the right direction, and future it is going to be a challenge to manage the produced water management the way we have been dealing. We have to really change the way we have been dealing with this in future. And there is a major change is going to happen on this account. Next, please. The fourth thing, important thing, which has already been spoken by my earlier speaker, EOR. I have put some 4 or 5 snapshots. You can read through. All EORs have given us the dividend, where recovery is improved by 5, 10, 15%, depending on the different EOR. In ONGC, we have implemented polymer. We have implemented thermal air injection in Valol and Santhal, which is heavy oil field. We have implemented miscible gas injection in Gandhar. And all of this have given us a dividend of something around, say, 12 to 13 million ton. And the past speaker, Mr. Subramaniam, he has told that about Mangla. I have put the one slide from Mangla also. And he told that 80 million we have realized that works out somewhere around, say, 11 to 12 million ton. So if we see in India itself, we have realized something around 24 million to 23, 24 million ton from EOR with ONGC and Kane. So we have a lot of experience on EOR in as far as EOR is concerned, different types of EOR is concerned. Our government came up with the EOR policy in 2018. So now come to the next slide, please. This I just saw a snapshot how we are taking benefit from the EOR policy. We have, first of all, we have shortlisted 54 reservoirs for EOR application. Out of this 54, we have taken 22 in the first phase and 32 in the second phase. 32 proposals have already gone to DGH according to the EOR policy. When EOR policy came, we were working on 4 commercial. Today, we are working on 6 commercial and 1 pilot. By another 2 to 3 years, our target is to take commercial to 10 and pilot to 16. So major jump in pilot from 1 to 16. And target oil will improve from when we started around 100 million ton to 160 million ton. And by 24-25, our target is to put everything on commercial depending on the success of the pilot. Commercial will be 26 and our target oil is going to be 5-fold increase from the date we started, 90 million ton to 450 million ton. So that is the benefit of a enabler policy change, which we are going to derive benefit out of it. And certainly it is going to improve the recovery factor from different fields where we are going to apply the EOR process. Going forward, 2-3 things I would like to say about EOR. The world knowledge of EOR has to be integrated. It is in a piecemeal today. We have never taken benefit of the EOR learning all across the world. It has been happening in a paper or anything. Now data analytics is the buzzword. We have to take advantage of this one to we don't commit the mistake which people have committed earlier. So lessons learned has to be used properly. Reduce lead time. Everybody talks about any EOR process 6 to 7 years minimum, whether it's onshore, it's offshore. Offshore it is a little bit more. Can we bring down to a half, say 2 to 3 years or 2 years? A lot of work is happening as far as design is concerned, pilot is concerned, commercialization is concerned. I think another 20-30 years, we will see a lot of journey happening as far as the reducing the lead time in EOR is concerned. And the last point I have written, CO2, everybody is dealing with CO2 and trying to get rid of this one and trying to become net zero by 2050. Very recently, we had one very useful workshop all with the participation of around 250 delegates. We are working on the CO2 injection, CCUS, very hard with one of the biggest refinery in India, IOC. And we are coming up with the project for the CCUS in one of our field in Gandhar. And feasibility is under study and shortly we'll come out with the details how we are going to implement this one. Next, please. So before I move to monetization of discovery, 2 points intentionally I have not touched. One is the policy, which I will speak about in the last slide. And the second thing is the business model. See, all these aspects, what I have told is it is a deliverable. To get this deliverable, there are many inputs. And one input is the business model. We have to interact with the world. We have to bring in technology. We have to bring in best of practices into our area. All this is not possible unless we create a business model. We go in a participative mode with the different industry in the business. As far as business model is concerned, today morning also it was talked about. It has to evolve, and we are working in that direction, whether we have to go in a joint venture mode, whether we have to go TSM mode, or whether we have to go in a different business model. We are working, and certainly within few months, I think we will come out with the model with which we will work with the different private partners or even other industry partners to improve the recovery factor from our fields. Coming to discovery, I've only devoted one slide for the monetization of discovery. Now, next slide, please. Once we make a discovery, if it is major field, I think economics is not our concern. Once it is marginal, from day one, the economy is a concern. And if it is a tough field, the technology also becomes a concern. And these two things keep any operator away from monetizing those marginal fields. If it is close to our infrastructure, still the case is much easier because we have to get rid of many infrastructure required to produce it one. So we have done a lot of clustering and phase development, CIMEX, everything, monetized many fields. And one diagram is shown on the right-hand side. It is a high S2S, 40,000 S2S, almost 8 to 9 fields we have monetized. And currently it is producing around 10 to 12,000 barrels. But the major reasons due to which we are not able to monetize is the size of the reservoir, lack of the infrastructure, the price reason, or the technological constraint. If it is a tight reservoir, HPHT reservoir, things like that, it is difficult to monetize. And it takes time to bring in the technology and prove the productivity of the wells in the tight reservoir. So it takes time to monetize. So these are the main reasons why we are not able to monetize. I will not get into the things how we have monetized the ONGC fields. But one submission I want to make here is that the way we are having a system for EOR, the way we are having a system for exploration, OLP and things like that, there has to be a system on monetization. My submission is that we should form an empowered body involving industry, regulator, in our case DGH, policymakers, for field or cluster specific action for early monetization. It has to be seen all the discovery by a apex body or a empowered body, why it is taking time to get monetized. And if any enabler is required, any action is required, that should be facilitated. So this is the submission I wanted to make about discovery monetization. There are different ways we have monetized so many discoveries in the last 15 years. So I don't want to get into the details. But going forward, I think if it is done, it will really facilitate the process of more early monetization. Next, please. So this is my last slide. Before I sign off, I just want to submit, because there are policymakers, there are top managers sitting all across. My submission is that I have seen the IOR policy. The first on IOR policy says if your recovery goes beyond 60% and gas field recovery goes beyond 80%, incentive becomes effective. It is a too high a number. If anybody achieves 60% of recovery in oil field, I don't think he is still going to continue. Most of the fields, 90% chances. So my submission is that, humble submission is that, if that recovery is brought down to 40% in case of oil, and gas, if it is brought down to 60%, it will benefit the industry and it will benefit the country. Coming to EOR projects, EOR policy is excellent policy. Going with the time, we have to incorporate the suggestions which I am going to submit for the consideration of the competent people. The first EOR pilot is necessary, but it should not be mandatory. All EOR pilots are economically unviable. So we have to think how we can incentivize the industry once they are implementing pilot. There is no policy as of now. The EOR schemes which have been approved before 2018, they are not getting benefit. So maybe consider for the incentive. Immiscible gas injection, it is known for a EOR process world over. It is not included in EOR scheme. My submission will be, people can give a thought to include this one. The fields where EOR pilot was conducted before the EOR policy, So that is being given a second thought. So my submission will be, any pilot is conducted at any point of time. It is a pilot. So that may be given a consideration for further commercialization. And the last one, the CO2 CCUS is going to be very capital intensive. I think the things will be required much beyond the ER policy. So we are working with the ministry and industry, everybody, and we'll come up with our proposal, how best we can move ahead so that the CCUS can be implemented in our country also. As far as monetization, I've already submitted that empowered body is required, which monitors all the discovery. And if it is getting time to monetize, what is holding up the process of monetization, it should be looked into, and it should be further facilitated. So with these words, I once again thank the organizers for giving me the opportunity to share my thought on the mature field. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gyani ji, for a wonderful lecture on how to manage matured fields. The field management practices have come from your experience, which will be very valuable to the audience, I'm sure. And in particular, your thinking that you are going to have your project based on CO2, which will serve dual purpose, not only of enhancing production, but also of sustainability. Thank you very much once again for your lecture. Now, may I request Mr. R.K. Vij, Dr. R.K. Vij, who is Director PDPU, and who is a person who has almost 4 decades of experience. And he was the person who was called, he has fire in his belly. Wherever he goes, he only talks of production and increasing production. I'm sure with his instinct in the institute, the students will benefit a lot. He has a lot of awards and accomplishments to his credit, which I cannot read out because of the paucity of time. I request Dr. Vij to go through his presentation.
Thank you, Yash Malik ji. Thank you very much. Good evening, and all my colleagues, the bureaucrats, the professionals, the upcoming energy soldiers, and my dear students. It's really a good opportunity. I must thank DGH for arranging a very dynamic workshop at this juncture of time, where yesterday I have seen that April to December 20, our import will have gone to 89.2%. I don't know where we are heading to. With my 4 decades of experience in oil and company and as a reservoir engineer, from last 2 years, I am trying to disseminate some of the knowledge I have acquired during four decades. And now the opportunity is to that we are looking at the coming 3 decades, that what we are going to do in coming 3 decades, that is upstream 2050. It's really a challenging job. I will be discussing about the field development plan. During my 4 decades of experience, I got the opportunity to formulate some of the development plan, including Bombay High Development Plan, various types, Gelki, Kalol, NBP, and the last, the Neelam. And I had a very good learning from these development plan, that what needs to be done in development planning and reservoir management, the topic assigned to me by the DGH. So I will be touching upon the points of development planning and reservoir management. Thanks to my earlier colleague, Mr. Gyani, who have already shared a very wealth of knowledge about the mature field management and some part of EOR, and Mr. Sai Subramaniam ji, which has given a very good account of the need for EOR and the results for EOR and the case studies, which has shown that where we should go ahead from now onward. Next slide. A field development is a very important activity in a life cycle of a field. And if we see on the right hand side, the initial investment which a company is making, whether it's a government company or an operator or a multinational, all the money is going initially. Oil business, which is a gamble, a high-tech business, a high capital intensive business. Each and every people cannot venture into this business. In India, it remained in the state sector till 1991, and then last 3 decades, it has gone to the private MNC and other things. But if we see the life cycle, the geological study, the seismic study, etc., where we are draining the money, and ultimately once we discovered the appraisal stage and then coming the development stage, development planning play a very important role. And if you see in a type of a phase-wise stage gate process, hello, am I clear? Hello.
Yes, you are clear.
The stage gate process which we have followed in some of the schemes, and as you know, the last 4 decades we have gone right from 1960 to recent 2020. The development planning concept have changed, and the planning is always, whether it's a business E&P operator, which is a business unit, needs some profit, and the profit and the decision which we are taking is in uncertainties. The oil game is an uncertain game, and the uncertainty remain even at the time of abandonment of a field. So whatever we are planning, so the planning needs to be first time right. Next slide. The consideration for field development plan is what is the objective of the development. Definitely, when we are developing a oil and gas field, we must be clear whether it's an oil field, gas field, retrograde field, dry gas field, what needs to be done, what we are going to produce, for which we need a petroleum engineering data. And data which is, as you know, that when we are acquiring the data, it have its own inherent uncertainties in the acquisition, interpretation, and processing. And then we have to describe the engineering facilities. We are going to make an investment plan for the future. And that future is not 2-3 years, it is around 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, and even beyond. We have never imagined that we are going for making the project from Bombay High in 1976-78, that even after 40 years it will continue, and almost 40 years have gone, and still we are thinking another 20-30 years will continue. The development planning for a long terms in uncertainties is really difficult task. It's not an easy task. And the task involves a knowledge and skill.
Yes, sir.
The cost of manpower, the estimate, whatever manpower estimate.
Yep.
Hello?
Presentation is not in presentation mode.
Yeah.
एक बार देख लीजिए.
Oh. So, hello, Anushka. You are not able to see the slide? Oh.
Yeah.
So the presentation is from your end, that is why. No, that was from your end, sir. We are presenting now. The presentation was initially from your end. That is why probably there was an issue. We are presenting.
Oh, okay, you can present. Okay, you can present. Second slide or third slide? Anushka, you have my presentation, na? Oh.
Not sure.
Hello? Anushka?
No, the social friendly fellow is now taking over charge. He's trying to fix up the presentation.
Okay. I think that's why I told that I sent the presentation. Okay. Okay, no problem. Second, third slide, next slide. Now it's clear? Yeah. So what basically involves the field development plan is the integration of data. And when we are talking of the data, whether it's the exploration or the development data, the geological, the geophysical, reservoir, and the production data needs to be acquired for formulating the development plan. Initially, we used to have the conventional development plans or the normal reservoir engineering methods. But now most of us, we have switched over to the software, commercial software, which we are using for the development planning. Again, these softwares assumes, based on the numerical methods of simulations, they assume some of the data, whether it's a homogeneous nature of the reservoir or the heterogeneous nature of the reservoir. And then we make some error in putting the data. The integration of the data is the most important thing. This is the data which we collect from the field, that is the geological, geophysical, and reservoir and production data. Then there is a data which we need to acquire, next slide, that we need to use from the laboratory. Next slide. So then we have to use the data, whether it's a core or the PVT or the fluid. So that data which side by side, we have to get the data from the laboratories. And by integrating these two data, we are converting this our static model into a dynamic model. And once we are telling the dynamic model, we needs to know the oil property, the rock property, and the fluid property. And the schematic, the workflow which we are using for individual development planning needs to be clearly understood. Right from the seismic interpretation to the fault nature which we are using in the static model, and then the scale study which we are normally doing after the getting the core and all that. So we have to put this data, and that data needs to be synchronized in most of our cell. The cell size is maybe 100 meter, 200 meter, or 300 meter. Once we are upscaling the data from a core or a one point of a well to a kilometers and kilometers of a field, and then ultimately we are upscaling, and then once we are using in the simulation model, again we have a computational facility, and then we are using this data. So the integration of the data and the use of data for the development planning plays a very important role. And if it is not correct, definitely we are not going to make the plan very good, and this will not be for the good business practices. Next slide. Next slide. Coming to the, so what, when we are making an investment decision, we must know what we are looking for. Right from the, what is the initial oil in place, what is the drive mechanism, what is the recoverable oil. Because whatever investment we are making in a huge investment, nowadays it's the investment is millions and billions of dollars. And the investment basically is in infrastructure, and then we have a unique exploitation strategy. There is no thumb rule for all the reservoir. Like human being, all the oil reservoirs are unique, and they need a unique exploitation strategy. A reservoir management can play a key process in the life cycle of it for the field for a better recovery management. The life cycle planning as well as the mid-course correction. It is always not clear when we are making a plan. We have to continuously monitor the field, and if there is mid-course corrections, we have to incorporate the mid-course corrections. And if we are not making the mid-course corrections, we are not heading towards the planned recovery which we have envisaged. At the time of making a development plans, we are making the liquid production, gas production, and other data. But if it is not coming, then we must understand that what went wrong, and then we have to make a course correction. If we are not making course correction, then it will be definitely not a good proposal or a business proposal for any business unit. So for making a profit for any company, the national oil company or a private company or a MNC, each company needs a profit. And once the needs a profit means they have to manage their asset in a manner so that they can recover the maximum oil. Next slide. The redevelopment strategies, once we are making the one plan, and then we are again making the redevelopment strategies. When India, we have made the plan for in 76 and 78 for Bombay, we were not, and then we are continuing for continuously 20 years. The first redevelopment plan we attempted in 96, 97. What went wrong? Why the production has gone down? What went wrong? And then we have to formulate a redevelopment strategies. The redevelopment strategies incorporate the data, and in a computer software terminology, we are using and you are making the history match, and so that we can understand in a better way. And once we are making the redevelopment strategy through our simulation-based development planning, and based on that we are making the future prediction based on the performance analysis. So that way, if online modeling is there, it's good. Unfortunately, in India, we have very few fields where we have, even the larger fields don't have a single model. We have a vintage model of various sand and various time, and that's why it is very difficult to, when we are taking a decision, it is to be based on the performance analysis, and the human touch needs to be done. If we have an online model, definitely we can make the arrangement for in whatever redevelopment strategies, and we can shift the strategies. Sometimes there are environmental factors which delayed the process. We know some of the cases, it's not easy. The forest clearance, the whole of Northeast India, you might be knowing that the forest clearance, there are some fields where we need a forest clearance. Government and enablers, once they are asking for the DOC and all that. So the other factors, the other agencies involved in which enables the company to clear the project needs to be lined up along with the development plan. There are cases where environmental factors had delayed the process of development, and ultimately the production could not be achieved. The development strategy or the exploitation strategy cannot be the single strategy. Even for a single field, if a company like National Oil Company like ONGC or Oil India will be there, they have the different strategy, whereas the Vedanta or the JTI or the GSPC will have a different strategy. So we need to understand, the regulator must need to understand when they are dealing with a national oil company or a multinational company or a private entrepreneurs. Depending upon the strategy or the exploitation strategy of these companies, they will make the plan. Although there is not a profit is a main source of thing, but for a national oil company, the recovery also plays a very important role, and we feel that national oil company have a liability or is a responsibility for enhancing the recovery and for making the recovery more amount of oil from a same field. But my colleague Mr. Gyani has shared that the problems of the mature oil field. So if mature oil field is there, so definitely we need to understand that how we can recover. The focus on, as he has told, that 90% of the oil is coming from matured field. So our focus is always on matured field, whether we are going for the water injection or a pressure maintenance or the enhanced oil recovery. And the status which has been shown by Mr. Gyani, you have seen that out of 400, 300 fields which are on production in India. So even the EOR have not touched even 20, 30 fields as of now, in spite of around 60 years of the oil industry in India. Next slide. The reservoir management also a key role. The key requirement for the offset of the what we are looking for in the matured field, that what are the natural decline in the field, whether it's 8%, 10% or 12%. When we are making the reservoir, we are talking of a reservoir management, our focus is on to offset the decline in the production by IOR, EOR and other method. And the IOR, EOR and all these are investment decisions. At the time when the 40 years have gone, the facilities have gone old. At that time, making a new plan of an old field is a very difficult task. The operating cost has increased. The revenue which we are expecting is less. So managing a matured field is a very difficult task. I'm happy to share that like a company like ONGC have a very good skill in managing the matured field which they are showing, whether it's a Bombay High, Neelam, Hira or Kalol or Gelki, whatever it may be. It is really a professional approach which they are dealing, and then still the fields are giving a good amount of oil. What we need for the future is that whatever human skill involvement is there, the smart technologies are coming. Data we are generating daily. In India, like ONGC and other companies are drilling around 500 number of wells in a year. Whether we are able to integrate the data, so the big data has come in a big boon for oil industry. If we are using the big data and IoT and other things, definitely we can integrate the data for optimizing the recovery. The data which is generated daily from a single well or the producer well or a drilling data needs to be integrated in a team which Mr. Gyani has shared. The team cannot be in silos. Team needs to be one, and one team, not only subsurface, surface or production or drilling or service provider. That single team responsibility is to deliver. And once the team is working, definitely the delivery will be there. The dynamic process of using short and long-term strategy.
Please expedite.
Yes. Okay. Just 3 minutes. Dynamic process of using the short and long-term strategies will depend upon the reservoir performance and application of technology. At the end of the field, again, the costly technology, if you want to implement, again, it's a very difficult task. In India, whether we are able to still have a skill on multi-stage fracturing, although we have drilled a large number of horizontal wells, multi-stage fracturing is still a future dream. Monitoring the real time and the corrective action and implementation of the digital oil field. It's our dream that we should have a digital oil field where the human intervention should be less. But present status and the government regulations must encourage for the digital oil field, and so that we can achieve a higher production. Implementation of these technology, whether it's IOR or EOR, is always for the maximizing the economic benefit from the existing field. And induction of relevant technology can only maximize the profit. Next slide. Only 2 more slides. It's just one example. Development, recent example. A field having 60 million tons of oil near Louisiana, Gulf of Mexico. See the investment, $6 billion, 41,000 crore. The oil starting is 5,000 barrel only. The plan has been made. 2014, the discovery well anchor 2, delineation, huge expenditure. First stage development, asking 7 subsea well. This is a development planning. And see the agency involved, Transocean, Pacific Drilling, Subsea, Wood, DSME, and the operator which is Chevron. See the responsibility of a company spending 41,000 crore and expecting starting production of 5,000 barrel only. So this is a development planning, and definitely this planning at 11,000 meter of depth in Gulf of Mexico. This is a plan, and this is the actual plan which I've taken from literature. So how they will manage this field development planning, and they are optimistic that even then with 440 million barrels of oil, definitely they will be having a profitable venture. Next slide. Next slide. This I think already Mr. Gyani has already shared. This is just an example that what we have planned, development plan, and what has actually happened. First slide. See the production has gone to 90,000 barrel sustained for 2 years against our estimation of 7, 8, 10 years. But still we are managing in a way where we are heading for 40% recovery. Offshore field, Western offshore field of ONGC. Second case, see the production has gone, liquid production has gone to more than 1 lakh barrel. And how we are managing. The third, the EOR, and the fourth one. See the production has gone from 120 ton to around 700 ton. The example of EOR and this development planning. So once we are going for enhanced oil recovery, so these case studies, successful case studies are already with us. And definitely once whatever experience we have, if we are going for but Gyaniji has shown, if we are going for around 50 fields in 2030, we are bound to increase the production from India. Next, last slide, I think. Next, regulator roles. Sorry, just before. Regulator roles, demand is increasing. Just see, refining capacity, we have already increased the refining capacity. The consumption, the production, and as shared by my colleague, the production is stagnant, our consumption is increasing. What we can do? The only thing is that we have to adopt the technology, whether it's enhanced oil recovery, the financial incentive needs to be done on mature field, and further liberalization in oil sector, whether the liberalization which has been done in 91 and last 28 years, whether it is sufficient or not, how much FDI is as on date is in oil sector or hydrocarbon sector, whether although regulatory body have make a praiseworthy effort for EOR at a very late stage, whether it's continuously effectively interacting with achieving the business and country's objective, whether country objective can be achieved with the business objective of these small private companies which are producing 100 ton, 50 ton or 20 tons of oil, and then encouraging the FDI by deregulating the policy is a need of the hour. Next, last. Regulatory body development planning is an important milestone in the life cycle of a field. Reservoir management is a dynamic process, and it should be imprinted in the mind of professional, not only subsurface, surface, reservoir engineer, geologist, but drilling engineer, production engineer, surface engineer, everybody. Then only reservoir management is not a role of reservoir engineer. Reservoir management is a role of E&P professional. And we know that inherent uncertainty is there in this business, and we have to work in this environment. And business objective needs to be synchronized with the organization and country objective for maximizing hydrocarbon discovery. We cannot think that organization will not be profited and country objectives can be achieved. So this is a role of regulator, and regulator should aggressively pursue E&P operator across the country for achieving the national objective. When they are talking to ONGC, so the tone should be different. When we are talking to a private operator which is producing 50 tons, so that cannot, same tone cannot be there. And then this is my last slide. Thank you very much. Thank you, SG. Thank you, thank you,
Yeah,
sir.
thank you, Vaishab, for enlightening us with the intricacies of field development, the pitfalls and the rectifications done online and dynamically. Thank you very much, Vijay, for your presentation. We have now Mr. Vilas Tavade, ex MD, CEO of SR, now presently advisor oil and gas professional. He has over 35 years of experience, and he's one person. uh, I think there couldn't have been a better person more fit than him for unconventionals. He had steered the highest production in CBM during his time in the country. So, Mr. Tavade, please.
Mr. Tavre, we're not able to hear you. You're not audible. Probably you'll need to refresh your window once and rejoin so that, if there's any glitches. I can just start sharing his slide probably so that when he joins, he can begin right away.
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you now, sir.
Thank you. So thanks for the opportunity. The organizers and Vision 2050 is the right appropriate word because world is moving towards net zero, and the major change in US election has accelerated. In fact, one of the top 5 agenda includes global warming on top of the agenda of Joe Biden. So this was overdue, and it has been taken rightly on time. As rightly said, yes, SR is a pioneer in conventional, mainly CBM, doing the pilot wells in 92-93. Then we started development in Raniganj. We touch around 1.2 million standard cubic meters per day, but we have to cut back because of the evacuation facility. And now again, last Sunday I attended the Durgapur Dhobi-Durgapur pipeline was dedicated. So that's a good news for the CBM producing areas. They can monetize every molecule of gas. Next slide, please. So this is the Earth-Mars extinction cycle I invariably show in most of my presentation. As you see, we see the first extinction happened in 69 years, 124 was the second, 51 was the third, 134 was the fourth one, and we already completed 66 million years. So if you go by law of averages, are we on the fifth extinction? And this fifth extinction will be the first extinction with the human beings on the planet. Isaac Newton, with the reference of Bible, predicted 21st or to 23rd century, there will be doom or whatever the next mass extinction. Even if you go by Hindu mythology, Brahma's 1 year is 1 day is 4.5 billion years. If you see Earth formation is almost 4.5 billion years. So is this a coincidence or I don't know. Anyway, I just leave it to here, but we should reduce the impact of this. The worst was the third one, which had impacted almost 60% of the animal facilities. The latest signal we got from Uttarakhand is one of the part of it. Next slide, please. So one, we have to agree that transition of energy from carbon to hydrogen is going to happen. So hydrogen is the cleanest or sustainable energy model. Economics right now may not be very favorable, but soon, as we see, we had solar energy costing around 20 rupees per unit, which has come down to 2 rupees. So not very far off that technology can bring down the hydrogen as a commercial viable. But in between, I feel the bridging next to hydrogen, which is the cleanest fuel, is gas. So environment friendly, of course, cheaper than liquids on energy value basis. So still 20 to 30% cheaper than crude even on the import terms. Enabler for commitments of COP21 and the policy initiatives are favoring that. Next slide, please. So this is where we said the renewables lead to the transition to lower carbon energy mix. So if we see the rapid, which will be covering around 40%, but if it really go to net zero scenario, the energy mix will have only 20% of our fossil fuels. However, this doesn't say that oil production will be impacted, because oil to O2C will be the scenario in next 40, 50 years. But O2F will definitely be a challenge, which where all this cost economics and how to reduce cost will come into picture. Next slide, please. So this is I was highlighting towards gas economy and India's greenhouse gas mitigation plan. The major two factors are, of course, gas and biomass. Focus on gas today. Next slide, please. So unconventional hydrocarbon, focusing on gas today. One is the state of hydrocarbon, the nature of geological reservoirs, and types of technologies required to extract this. Definitely slightly more expensive than per unit of energy than the conventional. So we have to bring in how to make it more cost economical. Challenges are there. Volatility of oil prices, because here even in India market, gas is linked to the oil prices. Whatever import contracts are there, they are linked to the oil prices. So we have to see that this gas is available to all and available at very cost effective price. Next slide, please. So unconventional gas, main part, tight gas sands, which are there, and I will focus on coal-bed methane. Of course, gas shales are there, which right now there are no commercial production yet, and gas hydrate is still in the on the research stage. Next slide, please. So CBM activities in India started with Big Bang with allocation of 33 blocks, but however only 7 blocks are in development and most of the others are under relinquishment or relinquished. The challenges which are going to highlight why these are there. So we have to need to revisit this, identify the smaller blocks, identify the prospective part of the blocks which are in this area, mainly the Damodar Valley Basin, and of course even in the Cambay Basin, and submit the expression of interest to the DGH government for development of that. So this needs to be revisited. Coal Ministry has also given the mandate to coal blocks to produce CBM, but that's the separate aspect. So we need to work on that also, where we can see enhanced CBM production from that. Next slide, please. So shale gas to be put on map of India, really it needs to be focused. Cambay and Gondwana, these are the top two basins where some activities has already been done by ONGC. I said need to be focused with all the agencies which are working on this, whether it is Simfer, whether it is operators like GCL, ONGC, SR, and others, even CANE. They have to come together, share the knowledge, and then bring this on the map of India so that it is commercially viable. On paper, high prospects, everything is there, good, looks good, but really bringing shale gas to the surface and then distribution is a big challenge. Next slide, please. So gas hydrate, I said, need to be reevaluated based on this net zero and the commercial viability. So that's a topic I won't be touching. We will go to the next slide where we will be focusing on challenges. Major challenges in successful development, along with technical challenges, reservoir challenges, geological challenges. There are I have highlighted 6 challenges which we had faced through the development. Coincidentally, I was attached with this project since 2009, so 11 years I was with CBM Raniganj. So we went right from we said exploration well, test wells, all experience are there. So first, the aspect which I will highlight is unconventional asset. We require a proper attitude people to do unconventional asset. Most of the forum I say this is not a big budget movie, not Amitabh movie. It's like a Mithun Chakravarti movie. So this development has to be handled in that scenario. Then there are regulatory aspects I will touch upon in the future slides. Land acquisition and water management. As we were discussing earlier that what is CBM project? A CBM is basically land and water management project. If you can manage land, if you can manage water, I think methane gas is incidental, it will come. And these are the real challenges, but we could handle it successfully. Around 300 acres of land we acquired in the state of West Bengal. Water management, the cost of water handling is the least. As Sai said, we have to manage water within the reservoir, but unfortunately in unconventional, the more water we produce, the more there will be yield of gas. So we have to produce more and manage it effectively. And the gas evacuation, which has been a major challenge to all the CBM industries. We started the exploration development in 2010-11. However, the infrastructure was available for Reliance in 2017, and for us, it was just commissioned a day before yesterday on Sunday by Honorable Prime Minister dedicating the pipeline Dobi Durgapur. Next slide, please. So I was just highlighting the attitude or the capability of the person. So these are the 4 major development players in India. And I have compared apple to apple for around 2.9 million standard cubic meter facilities with water handling of 9,000 and gas network of 220 kilometers. One operator could do it at 410 crores, whereas the operator did it at 681 crores. Now, this is where the difference is. If you come with the proper mindset and how to develop it, it has to be, there is a scope for the scope of even optimizing on 410. So this type of concept, or we say the capabilities within the people, has to be developed right from the institute level. So in fact, I have interacted with few institutes whether to bring in the unconventional gas basically on a major topic should be covered so that they are prepared to take these challenges. So this is one of the aspects, right people with the right concept and right attitude to develop a small project. Incidentally, in India, there is no special regulatory for CBM gas, which doesn't have condensate. So all the oil and gas regulations are there, where installation has to be have flare and everything is there. That's where is that adding is cost, but that's a separate aspect which has to be taken with the regulators in India. Next slide, please. So regulatory issues and stakeholder management, as I said, I took almost 30 permissions to start for development, right from consent to establish to disposal of water and conversion of land and electricity board permission. So this is where the challenges are there. We have to interact with federal regulators, state, local and other authorities. Environmental and forest clearance is a big challenge. We could manage it, steering it properly, but still it is a big challenge. I will just give the impact of that. Last year, I did the carbon audit of my project of SR CBM project. We were almost 30,000 tons of carbon negative operationally. So 30,000 tons of carbon means 30,000 trees have been planted virtually by the project. So one tree on an average life of 40 years absorb 1 ton of carbon. So if such a clean gas is available, the ministry has to take a proper pragmatic view to give early clearances for that. Close interaction with local government that has to be there, and engagement of stakeholders and engagement effectiveness. This while the cycle is going, the review is not done by most of the companies. One of our companies facing hardship because of local issues, and they have to reduce their production almost by 50%. This challenges are there. So handling regulatory issues and stakeholder engagement we should have a strong team so that all this is handled in a very proper, effective way. Next slide, please. On the land, it was a challenging task, but we also came up with the option of doing multiple wells from single pad. Initially, we had apprehension whether this can produce the same way, but yes, our results are showing that even the directional wells are producing the similar giving the similar productivity. In fact, now a 45 degrees inclined wells concept has come that will help us to give more gambit. So this can be tried. Land acquisition is a challenge, but we have to interact with the local people to get into this. Next slide, please. Second is, as I said, I will not call it as a produced water. I always call this as a co-produced. Whenever you call a produced water, then there are certain norms by the Pollution Control Board. This water just has high TDS. Otherwise, it doesn't have any H2S or any oil which has to be managed. So our TDS ranges were as high as 8,000. The disposal norm is 2,100. So cost-effective treatment of co-produced water is another big challenge where even in Australia the challenges are very difficult because of the stringent norms. So we found a very cost-effective solution where we had a satellite reverse osmosis treatment and filtration, then treated water discharge way forward to use in irrigation or fisheries purpose, and then first we use it for our drilling, fracking, or dust suppression in the mining, or even the Verco operation also use this water. So these are the ways where even the international norm is almost $1 per meter cube, but we have managed it very cost effectively in CBM Raniganj. So very cost effective water treatment is a major aspect for making this project successful. In fact, as it's rightly said, water is very important resource, and it has to be managed well. In fact, before the greenhouse global warming, water scarcity is going to hit the planet. I was in South Africa last year, where the rationing was 50 liters per day per person in Cape Town. So this type of stringent norms will come, and that may impact even by 2030. So water, and of course, I think the World Health Organization or UN, they are working on whether they can give a water credit for water saved, similar like carbon credit. If they can work out, they're working on that scheme. And if that scheme comes in, the co-produced water from CBM or shale can be monetized. So that can be an additional factor for monetization of CBM. Next slide, please. So, and the last and important is gas evacuation network, monetization of gas. This network right now has come to Durgapur, but this is in the near vicinity of 6-7 blocks which are under development. Almost all the development blocks have got impacted because of this. So the end mile connectivity as an infrastructure, if the government or the pipeline agencies which are there, if they can support the small CBM operators, because now the next round of bidding, where the people will have only 50, 60, 70 square kilometers block they may be bidding. So if this support is coming from the government or the GAIL like pipeline agency, this will help to monetize the CBM gas. Unfortunately, in unconventional reservoir, you can't test it and cap it. To know the complete potential of the reservoir, you have to produce the well at least for 1.5, 2 years, and then you know the complete potential, and then you can plan your development plan. So basically, that's why then during this process, if you don't have a evacuation infrastructure, definitely that will impact your monetization. You will be flaring the precious natural resources, which was in fact done by all the operators. But right now, because the gas pipeline is in place, it will help all the CBM operators. We in the central region also, where around yeah, I'm almost towards the last slide. So this region where I think the new east-west pipeline should cover that region, which will cover even the Orissa and other areas where CBM and shale prospects are there. Next slide, please. Along with this net zero, the CDM mechanism is going to play a big role. So if you see in the near future, we will get a good carbon credit for the clean development mechanism. If this happens, this should also support the CBM shale gas projects, because this will give a monetization in terms of replacing the existing dirty fuel. CBM gas is almost 40% cleaner than fuel like furnace oil, etc., and almost 55 to 60% than coal. So this is one of the area which we all need to work upon, how to monetize the CDM mechanism for unconventional gas exploration and production. That's it from my side. Thanks. Next slide is next slide, please. So this is where you can reach me. This is Vila at outlook.com and other social media. Thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity. On eCBM, I would like to say that we have already submitted a complete docket to the government. So I have not touched eCBM. eCBM policy has to be made separately for CBM and Shell. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Tavade Sahab, for giving such an exhaustive overview of CBM. May I request Mr. Anurag Sharma, Director Onshore, to sum up the session.
Thank you, Mr. Malik. It was a very informative session with the speakers who are experts in their own domains, and all of them are very passionate about their subjects as well. So I'll just like to summarize what has been discussed very briefly. Starting with Mr. Gyani, he spoke on optimizing production from mature fields. So increasing oil recovery from the aging resources, which is an area of major concern, and the mature fields, as we are all aware, they contribute to around 2/3 globally. And in India, this percentage is even higher, around 90%. We are facing declining oil productivity and aging infrastructure. So as Mr. Gyani said, that we have to manage production decline in short term and increase recovery over the long term. He also talked about high water cut, which is synonymous with mature fields. So effective water management is critical in these fields. Mr. Gyani also talked about identification of bypass oil through advanced technology induction and improving operational efficiency through automation. He highlighted that collaboration across the value chain would be very useful for management of mature fields. And he suggested that high liquid withdrawal, flow assurances, etc., are some of the strategies which we should be pursuing. Another important aspect related to mature fields is management of non-flowing well inventory for obvious reasons. Then Mr. Gyani and Mr. Sai Narayan both spoke on EOR, which is a proven technique for mature fields. However, as both of them said, it is a technology and capital intensive process. Mr. Narayan said that it is important to start early, do a lot of research, and invariably EOR would result in huge benefits, as he highlighted 10 to 15% increase in recovery factor. However, he raised a few concerns regarding polymer availability in the country, and conducive policy framework. So they have talked in detail about the ongoing efforts in the area of EOR and the upcoming efforts as well. But as regards ER, we have to be patient with their implementation as well as the results. Mr. Gyani also shared his wish list for IOR and EOR projects as well as monetization of discoveries. So he feels that proper regulatory framework would help in early implementation of these technologies. Another area which we need to focus as regards to production challenges in mature fields is technology induction, especially in the areas of reservoir characterization and hydrofracturing. Mr. Vich talked about the importance of field development planning and WTP. He said that efficient reservoir management requires well-established technologies and best practices in efficient field operations to maximize the return on investments. So it is important to choose the best development concept and do timely course corrections and devise redevelopment strategies. Coming to the last speaker, Mr. Tawade, he spoke on unconventionals. So as regards conventionals, the global energy landscape has changed significantly in the last few years, as we are all aware. The technological advances which have been made in the fields of tight oil and shale gas. So Mr. Tawade spoke in detail on this, and unconventionals shall play a very important role in the coming years, that is for sure. ONGC has also been taking a keen initiative in these areas, and we have made a lot of efforts in CBM, shale gas, underground coal gasification, as well as we also participated in gas hydrate exploration program. Mr. Tawade highlighted that unconventionals are more expensive to develop and require a higher price. He also highlighted 6 major challenges, the major being LAQ, water management, and gas evacuation issues, as well as regulatory issues. So he highlighted he required 30 permissions for his project. So in spite of all this, one common theme which binds all the presentation is that every bit of incremental production is important for the country. So despite all odds, whatever difficulties we might be facing, both the government and we as part of the industry, we are committed to convert these challenges into opportunities. So a number of policy level initiatives have already been taken by the government, and we should take advantage of these reforms to ensure energy security for the nation. So in the present scenario, this summit under the aegis of Ministry of Petroleum and DGH is a good platform for upstream operators to address various issues and enhance their contribution to the country's energy basket. So I would like to thank the organizers as well as all the speakers for their contribution and their efforts in making it a success. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for your exhaustive summing up. I'm also thankful to all the audience. We are more than an hour late cumulatively, and still there is a huge number. Really appreciate their patience. Thank you.
Question?
Achha, there were two.
Question.
Yeah, there were two questions. Sir, can we missed on that? Can we do that?
Please.
Yes.
First is from Mr. Sai Subramaniam. Can you please come up with the...
So the question to me was the polymer and ASP, how do we manage the environment and the ecosystem around us? I had responded on the window provided. I'll repeat. So the back produced water, or what comes from the reservoir liquid, which comes, which has some polymerized water which has got 500 to 700 ppm of polymer is treated and re-injected back in the reservoir. So that has the solids and other sediments, which after treatment, those elements go into the backfill on the Pollution Control Board authorized landfills. So that's how we manage. Like I said before, all the water is treated, processed, and put back in the reservoir.
Thank you. Second question is to Mr. Vij.
Yeah. The first question is regarding the machine learning. In fact, recently in January, we have organized a 5-day course for our students, BTech, MTech, and PhD student on machine learning for oil and gas professional. In fact, the course was given by Dr. R.V. Marathe, our own ONGC executive director, and course was very good. Now we are repeating the course. If anybody wants that course, whether it's a professional or student, they can register with us, and it's a free of cost. We will be providing that course. Regarding cyber security, this year we have started one course on MTech in cyber security. Although we are not touching it in the it's a computer engineering department, but we are planning to have the outlook for our oil and gas industry also. Recently, we have taken a PDP, we have taken 5 patents on various technology, including one of the technology which we are working on, the virtual reality and in digital twin technology, which is there for sucker rod pumping. And we have already taken, we will share our patent, design patent with maybe Malik sir and other for your benefit. We recently for BTech engineer, we have changed the course curriculum 2020, where the course for data analytics, IoT, and machine learning, artificial intelligence has been incorporated in the course curriculum. As of now, in PDPU, we have 35 people are doing PhD, and some of them are working on this, some of the topics which has been including the digital oil fields. And we are collaborating with some of the companies like Astrakhan University in Russia and the University of Alberta in Canada. So this is the present status. I think these 2-3 questions were there.
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank
SG?
you. Thank you. Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much, sir. I think we
Thank
can
you.
close the session. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.